Now this is actually North Yellowstone. We went in into September when things were kind of quiet before, I guess, that area got crazy with COVID.
In between. This is
So it's a picture y'all took then back there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I just wondered, it's beautiful.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, he does nature photography as his hobby, so
Oh, okay.
he does a lot of good pictures.
That's her picture, though, I think, not mine.
Oh,
Actually, Roland had one from his trip to Israel. I was thinking that Chap was going to come on with one just to show off.
I'm not as good at knowing how to do all that, actually.
Yeah, I haven't figured
I know
it out.
it's not hard to do. It's just I haven't done it.
Yeah.
well, I do it because we have a cat that will like be all over the place, so it blocks her.
That's very pretty, though. That's up around the canyon of Yellowstone, Grand Canyon of Yellowstone.
Yeah, well, no, it's north of Mammoth Springs on the way to Gardner.
Uh-huh. Oh, yeah, yeah. That's
Right.
very beautiful.
Gardner. Because I know
It's
you
like-
were there earlier this
Yeah, we were there at the 1st of September, so it looks like you got more fall foliage out of it. Yeah,
Yeah, we
that's
did.
beautiful.
Yeah, we did go at a good time for foliage. So
That's great. Let me see.
our only trip for who knows how long.
Yeah,
He just retired, so that was our retirement trip, was to go.
that was a great choice. So I'm going to see if I can get this to pull up on my computer as well. So, all right. Got a few more folks coming in, I think. Dan, I don't have a full screenshot yet on my phone, so I can't see more than one person. Yeah, are we filled up, or are we in good shape, or what?
We have 23 participants right now, and
Okay.
a few folks on Facebook Live.
Okay. Well, I don't know that we have others coming. Are you aware of any that should be here?
No, it just varies from week to week. We send it out, the link to the whole group, and we don't know who's coming until we click on.
Okay. Well, let's go ahead and begin then. Let's have a word of prayer. Father, thank you for our time together tonight, and thank you for this precious gift of being able to study in your word, and to have such a wonderful guide as Jack, and to be able to visually see what the words on the page speak about. We ask your blessings and your presence with us in this Zoom meeting tonight. Will you come and will you Zoom among us in the name of Christ? Amen.
Amen.
I'm not sure that's a prayer that has been offered a whole lot. Zoom among us. We can certainly try it. Okay, so welcome back to our fifth study looking at the Holy Land, featuring the perspective of our friend Dr. Jack Beck. As always, we're grateful to him and to Our Daily Bread Ministries for the permission to use this video material tonight. Tonight, we're going to take to the air a little for a very literal overlook, one part of the land that's known as the Jezreel Valley. I'm wondering if someone can tell us something about that valley. Anybody know something about it?
Don't remember.
Well, we learned it was a very important
4,000 miles long.
It's not 4,000 miles long. That would be the Jordan Rift Valley would probably qualify for that. But the Jezreel Valley is a pretty good size. Anybody else know anything about it?
Considered a food basket.
Yep. It is definitely one of the places where Israel draws a lot of its agriculture. It is. And what part of Israel is it? Does it anyone know offhand?
North.
Yeah, it's
North.
in the northern district of Israel, just to the south of the lower Galilee region, on the west side of it, and of Mount Carmel range on the east. It's just above that. Let me see if I can give us a map. It's named for an ancient city, Yisrael, which in Hebrew means "may God so," and some will say it means literally "el sows," El being one of the kind of names for God, which is found in the languages of that area. And that tells us that sort of name, "may God so," tells us just a little bit about the fact that this has long been a very fertile area, good for sowing and harvesting all kinds of crops, especially wheat. It's also known as the Valley of Megiddo. We're going to come back to that next week. And in Greek, Jezreel is translated by the word Esdraelon, and so it's sometimes called the plain of Esdraelon. Geologically, the valley was once a channel that actually connected all the Mediterranean Sea to the Sea of then Galilee, and then down the Jordan River Valley and the Dead Sea. Just kind of imagine that. Roughly 2 million years ago, which was just before I entered the ministry, that gap filled in. The channel was lost as the land between the Mediterranean and the Jordan River Valley rose up. So the result was that the sort of periodic floods, which used to come from the Mediterranean and sort of drench that area, ceased coming. And the Dead Sea then no longer had any kind of a connection to that body of water, which led to the Dead Sea both drying up. There was greater sense of evaporation than of any rainfall, and it increased its salt content. The effect of that all, however, made the Jezreel Valley an incredibly fertile region. All kinds of alluvial soils, a dark, heavy topsoil that right around one of the extinct volcano cones, which is Moray, that topsoil goes down about 300 feet down. Now, if you look at the map, you'll also see other things about this. I'm going to give you just this little look at this map, which you can see that it kind of hugs those mountains on the bottom part of it. Here is another view of it, which will give you, and I bet you I could do screen sharing and all kinds of things, which would be a whole lot more efficient. But I wouldn't know how to do that. So here you go. And this will give you just a little bit of a feel. Let me see if I can get it at the right spot of the map. It's kind of the appearance of an equilateral triangle, each leg extending approximately 20 miles. All around it, mountains rise up from the plain. The plain's only about 158 feet above sea level at its highest point. But in contrast, there is Mount Tabor on one side, which we'll see in the video shortly, rises 1,800 feet above sea level, and Mount Carmel on the other side, which is almost 1,800 feet in its elevation. Now, it's not always obvious, but this little valley has divided itself into two basins, and there's a little bridge of basalt which goes from Megiddo up to Tabor. It's not real significant today, But to ancient travelers, it was a real challenge because if the valley became clogged with excess water, what you had was two pans for basin pans for it. Any significant rainstorm could cause that whole valley that kind of runs there and the Kishon River that just kind of comes through it to swell and then to then back up, and then it would flood the plain. It's a little like our own area if you think about flash flooding here. What appears to be just a muddy trench or a bare trickle of something can rather rapidly be transformed into an almost raging river. One early adventurer in the 1800s said, quote, "The first time I crossed this river in a boat, and I swam the horses across it. The next time, there's no river at all." So this kind of gives you some indication of the periodic nature of this. So then why would you suppose this area becomes a strategic area? What is it about it?
There are some trade routes that go right through it.
Yeah, it is the easiest east-west route through the Central Mountains that offers the most level grade that will minimize net elevation change. Now, you and I don't think about that because we're not walking everywhere. But if you're walking everywhere, elevation change is a significant factor. You want to stay as level as you can rather than going up and down and up and down and up and down. That's why, for example, going north-south in Israel, it's the ridge route, which is popular for the locals because it goes in between folks having to go up and down. Okay, so that's why the international highway that will connect Asia and Africa and Europe moves through this valley. That's also why the empires of the world want to control this valley. Because if you want to tax and you want to regulate international trade, this is the place. And that in turn makes Jezreel into a battleground for all kinds of folks. So how would you realize control over this area? If you want to control this valley, how would you do that? Do you have to put a barrier all around it?
Just control the entryways.
Yeah, just figure out what's the key points of access and essentially turn them into toll booths. Because there's really only a very small number of ways through this. If you come north on the coastal plain, what you run up against is Mount Carmel, which forces travelers to abandon the valleys for travel up some very narrow mountain passes that kind of press through Mount Carmel under the Jezreel Valley. Yeah,
Jeff, could you reactivate your camera?
probably. Well, yes. Okay.
There you are. We
And
can
I'm
see you
also
now.
trying to join with video onto the other Dan, so hopefully that's going to come up in just a second off the computer. All right. So the most notable and desirable pass. So let me see if I can get rid of this. Okay. Let me turn this off.
Down at the bottom. Unmute yourself.
Unmute myself. Are we good, Neil?
Yes.
Everybody can hear. Thank you. And now I can see all of you, so this is much better.
Yes.
Okay. All I could really see before was Dan Conway, and though I like Dan Conway, I wanted to see other faces as well. Okay, so going from the south you've got to come across this whole mountain ridge, which is right there on the bottom. And to get over that, you have to go into Mount Carmel, and the Aruna Pass is the one that is the best one. You can also transverse through that basalt causeway that would lead you to Mount Tabor. But Megiddo becomes the best way through, which makes it the most important city in all of Israel, really. Other gates play some secondary roles around Jezreel and Bet Shan, but the international battles all took place there. And that's the reason why, as we'll see next week, the Bible says the final battle of the world will also unfold at Har Megiddo, Armageddon, the mountain of Megiddo. Now, historically, you can read that the Egyptian pharaoh, Thutmose III, who's around 1500 BC, made war in this area. He came every spring when he could for 20 years, trying to sort of attack Megiddo through that pass. The difficulty is it is so narrow that in some places the horses have to walk through it single file. There's no real way that you can maintain any kind of security in that setting, can you? And the people of Megiddo thought that so much so that they were safe that they left that pass unguarded. Thutmose was a very determined pharaoh. He told his generals, the capturing of Megiddo is the capturing of 1,000 towns. And he eventually does. Solomon too understood this. 1 Kings 9 tells us that as he worked to consolidate his nation, Megiddo's among the cities he will fortify. Later on, a different pharaoh of Egypt is on his way to assist the Assyrians in the battle against Babylonians. Carchemish is the battle, is one that will change the whole balance of power in the ancient world. And the king of Judah, Josiah, who's one of the good kings, if you may remember, tries to prevent Necho from doing so. He's trying to play off the powers against each other. It cost him his life there on that international highway, right in the same valley. There are battles on the other side of the valley as well, though. King Saul's last battle against all the Philistines was over control of this same valley. After he is mortally wounded near the city of Bet Shan, which is by the eastern gate, he took his own life. The most memorable conflict in this valley, though, is one which we read about in the book of Judges, chapter 4. It tells us that in the time of the Judges, somewhere around 1200 to 1170 BC, Israel battled against Jabin, who's the king of Hatzor. If you're turning your Bibles over to actually Judges 4, let's take a quick look at it. So Judges chapter 4. We'll just read the first several verses. Says, again, the Israelites did evil in the eyes of the Lord, now that Ehud was dead. So the Lord sold them into the hands of Jabin, king of Canaan, who reigned in Hatzor. Sisera, the commander of his army, was based in Harashoth Hagayim. Because he had 900 chariots fitted with iron and had cruelly oppressed the Israelites for 20 years, they cried to the Lord for help. Now, Deborah, a prophet, the wife of a man, which is actually, well, it's either Labadoth is the man or the city she's from. It's a little unclear in the Hebrew. Was leading Israel at the time. She held court under the palm of Deborah between actually Ramah and Bethel in the hill country of Ephraim. the Israelites went up to her to have their disputes settled. She sent for Barak, son of Aboniam, from Kedesh in Naphtali, and said to him, the Lord, the God of Israel, commands you, go take with you 10,000 men of Naphtali and also Zebulun, lead them up to Mount Tabor. I will lead Sisera, the commander of Jabin's army, with his chariots and his troops to the river, to the river Kishon, and give him into your hands. And Barak said to her, if you go with me, I will go. Now, I've just read you something with all kinds of names and places in it. And I suspect most of you thought, I don't know these people. And I don't know these places. And this means nothing to me. You might as well have read it in the Hebrew. Well, let's kind of unpack it for a minute. How does the story begin? Whose fault is all of this?
Well, the Israelites, because they did evil.
Yeah, it's the Israelites who bring this upon themselves. Okay, this is a time and time again story for them, isn't it? They abandon God, they abandon His ways, they do what they think is right. They do evil in the eyes of the Lord, and the Lord says, "We're not going there." So the Lord sold them into the hands of Jabin, king of Canaan, who reigned up in Hatzor. Hatzor is in Upper Galilee, north of the sea there. If you've been in the Galilee region, you go north towards the Golan Heights, essentially, and you'll find Hatzor. It's one of the most ancient cities, and it was at one time the largest city in all of Canaan and all of Israel. It was one of the most fortified. If you go there now, you'll discover that there's at least 2 gates to it, one that dates to one period and one that dates even earlier to it. Those of you that have been on our trips may remember going to it and seeing the gate and then hiking around it and seeing this other gate that had a big canopy over it. These are Canaanites, okay? These are people who are the original inhabitants before all the Israelites come in. Sisera, the commander of the army, is based in Harosheth Hagoyim. Harosheth Hagoyim means literally smithy of the nations, blacksmith of the nations. Some translate it carving in the nations. Some say silence of the Gentiles. If you're a Gentile, which most of us are, you're a goyim. That's the Hebrew term for the Gentiles. It means nations. And the Hagoyim is all the nations, and the Harosheth is a smithy of them. It's about 10 miles east of what is actually Caesarea now. And archaeologists have found an ancient chariot hubcap there. And on the chariot hubcap is a woman's image on it. It reinforces that the chariots are based there. Would it not make sense that you make ironclad chariots in a place called blacksmith of the Gentiles? This is where they are. So all these people are up in the northern part, closer to this Jezreel Valley. Where is Deborah according to this? She's between Ramah and Bethel. Where? In verse 3 or verse 5, I think.
Country of Ephraim.
Yeah, she's in the hill country. And the hill country of Ephraim is what is sometimes called, it's called Samaria sometimes. Man, we're having technological challenges tonight, getting things to stop making noises. Okay, it's still ringing. Okay. I threw it away. I put it in a drawer and it's still ringing. Okay. Okay, so The hill country is much further south than this. Ephraim is one of the tribes there. The hill country is where Elizabeth lives. If you remember when Mary goes to see her cousin in the hill country, it's not at all by this Jezreel Valley. The Israelites go to her because she is the judge. Remember that the judges are in play prior to Israel having a king. She sends for this man Barak, who's from Kadesh in Naphtali. Where is Naphtali? That's on the southwestern shore of the Sea of Galilee. So I mean, we're getting everybody here, aren't we? Pulling Deborah from the hill country, and Barak from over by the Galilean Sea, from Naphtali. Deborah's name, by the way, means in Hebrew bumblebee. Okay.
Okay.
You could call her Queen Bee, because that's pretty much who she is. Barak's name means lightning. So Queen Bee and lightning are the ones that are involved in this story. So what do you make of verse 8? Barak said to her, if you go with me, I will go. If you don't go with me, I won't go.
He was chicken.
You think he's chicken?
Yes.
Anybody else? Everybody ready to make him into a chicken?
Well, he didn't
I'm
want to
a woman, isn't he? Come on.
Yeah, but she said that the victory would be given to a woman if he didn't.
Yeah, so I mean, this is some identity politics going on here in an early age. But we ought to remember that Barak, along with Deborah, shows up in Hebrews 11 in the list of the heroes of faith, those who are commended for their faith.
Yeah.
That would tell me there's something more to old Barak than simply he's afraid unless a woman holds his hand. Could it be that actually he's just recognizing Deborah is the one who's been called of God, and he's deferring to her? You're the one God has put in this place, Deborah. I can't go unless you go as well. I don't know. He's either that or he's afraid he can.
Hey, Chapel.
Yeah.
I put a couple of maps in the chat window. If you double click on those, it'll give you a couple of screenshots to picture where stuff's happening.
Look at you, Daniel. You are.
The Jezreel Valley is the closer up, and then the bigger view, you can see Naphtali.
Great.
And stuff.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. So the Israelites gather at Mount Tabor, ready to confront their Canaanite enemies. This is an odd place for them to sort of start from. Let's turn to our video. Jack is going to tell us a bit more about that after Jack gets to play just a minute in a hang glider. We can turn to that.
One of my favorite things to do is build and fly my own airplane. So having an opportunity to do something I haven't done before in Israel, and that's do some flying, I'm just so excited about this morning. I know that flying is inherently dangerous, and every time I get in an airplane, I know that it might be the step into glory. It'd be kind of a short program if that happens. I've never flown one of these paraplanes. It uses a parachute as a wing and is powered by a snowmobile engine. Apparently, they found a use for snowmobiles in this place. Launch. I've been coming to this land for over 25 years, but I've never had this bird's eye view of the Jezreel Valley. Now, speaking of birds, This rich landscape attracts over 500 million migrating birds every year as they travel between continents. Flying might get a little tricky if they were migrating today. We're about 65 miles north of Jerusalem as the paraplane flies. I can see almost all of the 145 square miles of this fertile valley from my precarious perch on this lightweight aircraft. The valley was formed by the collapse of the mountains, and the resulting sedimentation leveled the valley floor, providing a natural transportation route. The sedimentation also provides the soil that makes the Jezreel the breadbasket of the Holy Land. It comes as no surprise that a land as rich and fertile as the Jezreel Valley would invite conflict.
That is one short stop.
Of course, where there's conflict, there's stories of life and death, of survival and challenging circumstances. And when we see these stories in the Bible, we see stories of people wrestling with faith, wrestling with what they would believe about their God.
And I got to tell you, this is a pilot's pilot.
The Jezreel Valley is a place of war. It's a place where Israel again and again met enemies who were more numerous than their soldier count. This land is so valuable, everybody wanted it. So even though it was assigned to 5 of the 12 Israelite tribes, what we find when we get to Judges chapter 4 is that the people living in Hatzor, Canaanites, have come down and occupied this space. One of the battles for control of this region was fought not far from here, where the dome shape of Mount Tabor rises abruptly from the valley floor. And since there's no place to land on top, I decided to catch a ride. We're going up to about 1,800 feet above sea level. That's a good 1,800 feet of climbing. Joshua had brought the Israelites into the land, and that generation had promised, we will remain faithful to the Lord as the one true God. And then they came into this land and started talking to the local Canaanite farmers about how to grow grain here. But they got one piece of awful advice, and that was that the local deity of this space, Baal, was a god they needed to worship in order for the rain to come. Everyone had more than one deity except Israel. This back and forth movement that we have going up the switchbacks of Mount Tabor, this movement between absolute faithfulness to the one true God and living in well-being to the polar opposite, which is adopting the worldview of their pagan neighbors. This climb up Mount Tabor just feels like the story told in the book of Judges. Years after Joshua, the Canaanites became strong and oppressed God's people for 20 years. In desperation, the people cried out to God for help. In the book of Judges, we read that God responded by raising up a prophetess and leader named Deborah. She summoned the army commander, Barak, and revealed God's battle plan to defeat the Canaanites. Deborah told Barak to gather the army, almost all infantry, here at Mount Tabor. Barak was hesitant. He only had 10,000 men from the tribes of Zebulun and Naphtali. He was outnumbered and facing a professional army with greater strength in arms. His faith was wavering. And so at his request, Deborah went with him to battle, speaking this prophecy. The glory of victory would belong to a woman. Obeying the commands, Barak summoned all available manpower to the fight. I can imagine as the soldiers gathered, they grew anxious. They were waiting right here because the forested sides of Mount Tabor were the best placed for infantry, particularly when they were looking into a plain with 900 ironclad chariots. That's where Sisera, the general of the Hatzor army, was. And the assumption of the Israelites gathering here, we wait. We wait, and we wait, and eventually that chariot corps is going to drive over to the base of the mountain and come up and fight us on the forested slopes, where we'll have the advantage of elevation and they will not have the advantage of technology. But instead, the prophetess Deborah told Barak to charge down the mountain and fight on the plain. They responded with a step of faith. And the Lord brought something totally unexpected that changed everything. He brought rain, and lots of it. The only reason you bring chariots into this landscape is if you were absolutely confident that it wouldn't rain. Although infantry are terribly disadvantaged against chariots on dry level ground, infantry have the advantage when the chariots are bogged down in the mud. And so we know that it's a time of year when rain was not expected. This rainstorm, flat out miracle, a miracle that God gave in order to give Israel the victory over chariots on the plain. The Jezreel Valley is a land worth fighting for. So again and again and again in Old Testament history, we read about wars that are going on here. Wars that almost always find Israel at the disadvantage, both in terms of numbers and technology. As I read the stories of this place and walk the rich soil of the Jezreel Valley, this place reminds me that one God is enough. Not just the obvious miracle of God's deliverance from enemies with just enough rainfall to turn the advantage, but so much more. Like Barak, when my own faith in the one true God is wavering and about to go under, there is someone who has promised to be with me through it all. This one provides me just enough faith to carry on. And the glory never belonged to me in the first place.
Okay, that's pretty good, isn't it? What is so striking about this story out of Judges 4 to you?
Maybe it's just so obvious, we're all thinking it. To be so outgunned and outnumbered and resourced, and then to have the confidence to follow the prophet and charge. It's just shocking and exciting and reinforcing.
Yeah. It certainly demands an extra measure of trust from Barak. I mean, being up on the mountain is a good place, really, because you're above your attackers and the chariots really can't get up there. They're almost useless. But what is the liability of being there? You have to wait, don't you? I mean, you have to wait for them to attack you. So what does God tell them to do? Run down the mountain. Go down the mountain in the valley below. Isn't that a bad idea, really?
Well, normally, probably.
I mean,
But not if God tells you to do it.
That's right.
Yeah, but I mean, Lucille, come on, you're like up in the mountain and you're okay up there. You can just wait them out, can't you, until they maybe go home or go to spring break or have something else happens to them?
I don't think they're going to plan on doing that.
No. Normally it would be a terrible idea. But then what happens?
God provides the rain.
Yeah. Now, if you're looking at Judges 4, you think, I don't see that anywhere in the 4th chapter of Judges. And you don't. But what you see it is in the 5th chapter of Judges. And it's just a reminder that what you have in Judges 4 and 5 are 2 accounts of the same story, one in prose in chapter 4, one in poetry in the 5th chapter. The Song of Deborah in chapter 5 is a more lyrical rendering of what happens. And in that one, what you see is that chapter 5, verse 21, the river Kishon swept them away. The age-old river, the river Kishon, march on, my soul, be strong. A torrential rainstorm that causes this Kishon, which you remember that we said is sometimes a raging river, and sometimes you can't even see it. It's barely a dry creek bed. It overflows. It mires Sisera's 9,000 chariots in the mud. What is the lesson from that?
Obedience.
Obedience is certainly part of it. What else?
Faith.
Sorry?
Faith.
Faith is part of that. Because what is it that the Israelites are supposed to see from this?
That their one God is all
God
in.
is on their side.
Yeah, it's in the end, who defeats the enemy? Does Barak and the Israelites in the mid of Naphtali?
No,
No. Who defeats the enemy in the end?
God.
God does. Okay. And it's always that way, isn't it? It's always that way. And this is the lesson he keeps trying to bring. God keeps trying to bring back and back to the Israelites. Look, you've got me as your God. That's all you need. Because I can do incredible things. Now, it seems to me that the miracles, and this, Jack says it's a miracle, and I would agree, but the great stories of deliverance that take place in the Bible are often not really about supernatural happenings. I mean, rain comes, it comes in that area. And when it does, that whole riverbed overflows. Okay. That's not a beyond nature happening. What's miraculous about it?
Timing. The timing.
Timing, yes, exactly.
It happened in the dry season.
It happens when it needs to happen, and it happens at a time when it wouldn't normally happen. When I was in college as an undergraduate, I had a religion professor at SMU who told me that the Israelites didn't cross the Red Sea, but they crossed the Reed Sea. Now, in truth, he was correct etymologically. The Hebrew is Yam Suf, which means Sea of Reeds. And that is an area that's known by that at closer to the mouth of the Nile Delta, closer to the sea than down to the Red Sea. And it's a very marshy area. And what he went on to say is that the water is really only a few inches deep there. It's not all that much. It's just mushy and marshy. And that from time to time, a strong wind will come along and will blow those marsh waters back. And that's what happens when the Israelites reach it. And they're able to cross over that marshy land, that Yam Suf, Sea of Reeds, on dry foot. And then the wind stops and the waters come back, and all the Egyptian chariots, like those of Sisera, get mired down in the mud, and they can't chase them any further. I listened to his explanation, and then I said, well, then I just have one question. It's only a few inches deep. How did the Egyptians all drown in those 2 inches of water? Which is what actually. Well, he didn't really want to answer that question. So we kind of moved on. But what I would say is that even if the parting of the Red Sea was just a natural phenomenon that happens from time to time, the miracle was that it happened at the exact right time that the Israelites needed it. And maybe it's the same here at the base of Mount Tabor. It's not that this is such an odd occurrence that could never happen in 1,000 years and God makes it happen. It's that it happens when it needs to happen at the exact same moment. I wonder if any of you have had an experience of when God answered a prayer and the answer wasn't particularly dramatic, but the timing of the answer was exquisitely right. Has anyone experienced that?
I think I have.
Okay, go ahead, share that.
I was a teacher in high school, and teachers, may have salary, but use a supplementary income. I would have other jobs, and so I took an evening job working for AS pumping gas, and then I work Saturdays occasionally, and I have to be in there on Saturday, and I was working on a master's degree in geology at the time, and this guy pulls up in a green Pinto station wagon, and we start talking because I saw he had geology field equipment in the back of his Pinto wagon, and started talking. And he says he was a teacher too in a nearby town where I was teaching, and he was working on his PhD. And if I hadn't been working on that day, he got me my job working for Texaco and changed my whole life with that condition, so.
Just a chance encounter that perhaps wasn't chance.
I know, but the timing was incredible.
Yeah.
If I wouldn't have been there that day and taken the extra job, I would have never met this person who changed my whole career.
Wow.
It's pretty amazing to me that.
Great, Dennis. That's very great. Anybody else have something like that where God seemed to do something at the exact same moment that you needed it to, or put you in the right place at the right time? Yeah, Norma, you got anything?
Well, it didn't happen to me, but last week my mother was pretty ill and they couldn't take her to the doctor, and she had just gotten a pacemaker 2 weeks before, and that doctor called to check on her to see how she was doing because she'd had a little issue with that. And my sister says, well, hey, we can't get her to the doctor. Can you help? Because she, some family members have tested positive for COVID and maybe she has that. And because that doctor was gracious to call and check on my mother, he called in a couple of prescriptions to her. And so she got medicine within hours instead of waiting for a doctor. So that was just like a little miracle last week when we didn't know what to do with, to help her. So.
That's exactly right. Yeah. Have you ever had a delay going somewhere and then you realized afterwards that was really a good thing? It would not have been good if I'd been there. I know in one experience I had as a missionary, I was going into Eastern Europe. I got caught in a border crossing in Hungary. I was detained. I was arrested for a day and a half while they figured it out. Finally was allowed to leave. I had about 1,000 Bibles in my van. They confiscated those. Although one of them went to a border guard that I'd been able to give it to. The rest of them ended up on the black market. I go back to my mission and I'm thinking, okay, that was not really good. I kind of blew that one. I got arrested and the whole thing fell apart. Discovered afterwards, the person I was to see in Hungary was under surveillance that evening by the secret police. If I had made it in, if I had met him as planned, as I'd scheduled, he would have been arrested. I would have been arrested. He would have gone to jail for 10 years. I would have been put in jail for at least 5 years as a foreigner. I mean, it was kind of like God was saying, I don't want you there right this moment. I'll take care of it. And just as a way to sort of say, and I can really do all of this. I will tell you, I was branded a persona non grata in Hungary. My passport was stamped non-valid in big, huge red letters. I was never to be allowed back into Hungary again. I was considered to be an enemy of the state of Hungary, which is kind of humorous to me. And 2 weeks later, the head of my mission said, I want you to go back to Hungary. And I said, I can't go. I'm not allowed in. He said, I want you to go anyway. So I did. I took the Orient Express from Vienna up to Budapest. We got to the Hungarian border. The Hungarian border got on. They come through the car to check all the passports. I'm thinking, well, this is going to be interesting because mine is very clearly marked. I'm not allowed in. And he comes to us. I found a couple from California, and so I sat with them thinking, okay, I'll kind of wedge myself in with some other Americans, and maybe I'll blend in better. He asked for our passports. I gave him mine. I handed it to him. He opens it up to the page where my Hungarian visa is. He glances down, and as he does so, someone comes up behind him and taps him on the shoulder. He turns around and he talks to them. And while he's talking to them, he's unconsciously stamping my passport, and then closes it up and then finishes talking and then hands it back to me. He's never really looked at it the whole time. And so I'm allowed into Hungary. And I'm thinking, okay, none of that was miraculous. I mean, it was all just the way life works sometimes. But the manner in which it unfolds is exactly the hand of the Lord. And when you begin to see that, when you begin to see how God works in all of these stories of the Old Testament, it really is the same. The lesson is who God is, and the answer is God is enough. I liked what Jack said about drawing a parallel between the switchbacks going up and up the mountain to the switchbacks that are in our relationship to God as well. We're all for Him, and then we're not so much, and then we're all for Him, and then we kind of get hidden by other things, and then we go back and forth. And maybe switchbacks is what the journey of faith is like for a lot of us. But as long as we keep moving upward and onward and forward, when we get to the top, what we discover is that God is enough. Well, one last note before we leave this Jezreel Valley. We know Jesus himself spent some time in this valley and along these same roads.
Yeah.
One rather dramatic moment of his life is traditionally set up on Mount Tabor, on that dome-shaped mountain.
Mhm.
Or if you go up today, you saw just a glimpse of it in the video footage. There's a beautiful church of the Transfiguration there that remembers when Jesus is transfigured on the mountaintop in that pivotal moment. Christians have been going to that location from as early as the 400s AD. It's not a terribly long hike from actually Nazareth, where the Church of Annunciation is found. Now, I don't want to burst anybody's bubble who's been there or thinks that this is this, but it's unlikely to me. I don't believe that this is the right mountain. The reasons to think that the high mountain referred to Matthew 17:1 is not Tabor, but it's Mount Hermon, which is 3 times higher than any other mountain in Israel, rises to over 9,000 feet.
That's why
We think Mount Hermon may also have been the site of the third temptation of Christ, mentioned in Matthew 4. You remember where Satan takes him to a high mountain where you can see all the kingdoms of the world. Well, you wouldn't see all the kingdoms of the world from Tabor, but from Mount Hermon, at the base of which is that international highway through which all the world passes. You would see it. In either case, whether it's Tabor or it's Hermon, we do know Jesus was at Mount Hermon. He did walk through this Jesuit valley, there's this connection all the way through from the very beginning. And some will say, actually, Judges 5, this Song of Deborah, is some of the oldest in terms of its composition portion of the Bible. This is one of the most ancient parts of the Bible, Judges chapter 5. So maybe tonight after we're done, it might be worth it to read Judges 5. As you do it, just try to remember this is a song, this is a poem, this is lyrical. It doesn't have to rhyme. It doesn't have to make perfect meter. It's a poem, okay? It doesn't even have to make perfect logical sequencing sense. It's a poem. But it will also bring you just a little bit different insight into what the previous chapter tells you. Okay, any other reactions or insights from this session? Anybody get anything new out of this tonight?
Well, I understood the importance of the Jezreel Valley where Deborah the judge, but if you move on into 1st and 2nd, the Kings, Solomon realized how important this valley was also, where he said it became
trying to fortify it. Yes.
The first toll road, you know, where he started charging people to enter into.
Everybody wants control of this valley.
Yeah.
It's not just agriculturally a breadbasket, but it is the way the world's armies have to pass, which is why I think, and we'll come to this next week, why I think Armageddon in Revelation is mentioned as the site of the last great battle, because it's the perfect symbolic location for that battle. And I've actually walked a little bit one time in that pass of Aruna, and it is tight at one point. And you think, okay, this is not the way to bring a conquering army if you have to get down to like one at a time, passing through here. But it is not the only way, but it's the easiest, best way over Mount Carmel, which when you look at the landscape, just kind of rises up like this. Just on this, you can see it here. It's just a massive block, rises up and goes all the way to the coast. Okay, so you can't really get around it on the coastal highway. You've got to get over it or get through it somehow. And so all of this valley becomes an important place then. Okay, any other comments or thoughts from tonight? Anybody wants to make? It's great to see each of you. So next week, just before Thanksgiving, we're going to close this series with a trip to Megiddo. We're going to do one final study, however, on December 20th, which is the Sunday night before Christmas. We're going to Bethlehem. Seems appropriate just before Christmas, and the Church of the Nativity. And we are working out having a very special guest with us for that night. Hopefully live streaming with us, Dr. Jack Beck, on the 20th of December. So both an in-person, we'll have it in Sanctuary. If you want to come in person and sit there, you can. Or we'll be also live streaming it and sort of zooming it for those who are not able to do that. Okay.
Question.
Yes. Yeah. Fish.
Clarification. So we are not skipping next week. We are finishing up.
Yes. Next week, next Tuesday, the 23rd of November, we will have, is that right? 24th of November, we will have our last session.
Okay, thank you.
Other than the Bethlehem bonus.
And you'll send out a reminder on the Bethlehem one?
I'm sure Dan will. He's
Okay.
I
very
will.
confident.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, he's if Dan wasn't here, I wouldn't be able to do anything. Actually.
And Oliver too.
Yeah, and Oliver's down there. He hides, so he doesn't let you see his face. But he's worth his weight in gold.
I just
All right,
don't have a
let's-
camera attached to this computer. That's all. I'm not
Oh,
hiding.
He's saying he has no camera attached to his computer. And we'll buy that for a while. Okay. Let me see who could close us out in prayer. Mike Maddox, would you pray for us tonight?
Well, God, I'm truly thankful for the word we heard tonight, that we can retain the word and just put it on in our hearts and minds and dissect exactly how it was and how they lived in the Old Testament. I'm thankful, Father, for you continuing to bless us and continuing to just help us by putting you first in every situation. I thank you for these things in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
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 So the next time it rains and you're in a hurry to get somewhere, just think, I may be avoiding a chariot crash on the road just in front of me. That may be why I'm delayed. All right, Stevie.